Okay, so I want to share this with you guys. I'm sure you guys have seen it previously,
please, yeah.
but thought this could be a fun little starter. You remember this?
Is that Boris Yeltsin?
No, Gorbachev.
Gorbachev.
I'm sorry. Not yeah, right. Fuck this. I haven't even continued drinking yet. But anyway, Gorbachev sitting in the back of like a fucking Jaguar Mark II or something like that with Louis Vuitton luggage.
Yeah, next to the Berlin Wall.
Oh, that's the best part. I didn't even notice that.
Isn't that great?
Oh man,
this is I think 2007 or 2008 is when he did this. Obviously before he died, but after the Pizza Hut commercial. Just like an incredible like mwah. What a cap to a life.
It's whoever did this was just like had pure contempt. They were just like, let's just make this as, like the poetry of it as grotesque as possible to piss off podcasters in 2021.
I mean, it sure pissed off Russians. I'll tell you that.
I should think so. This was a Louis Vuitton ad, right?
Yes, yeah. It was a magazine ad spread. Yeah.
Let me ask you this: what are like for the layman that's not like going into geopolitical political economy analysis that isn't consumed with the 20th century push and pull between capitalism, fascism, and communism? What is the best interpretation that like a magazine reader would get from that?
Victory. I mean, that's the, like the final like stamp on the end of the Cold War and the Soviet Union, right?
So like, it is the heavy-handed fucking commentary.
I mean, I think it's probably more just this like weird capitalist realist like nothing means anything. Like I think the tagline that went with that photo spread was like Louis Vuitton's ad thing at the time was something about like going on a journey. I was like, you go on a journey or what have you, and so he's like, he's thinking about his own personal life, his trajectory, his journey, all while carrying the Louis Vuitton bag. I gotta be honest, outside of like seeing that ad, I don't know if I've ever I probably walking around New York have seen people with Louis Vuitton shit. I never like understood the appeal of any luxury good to that extent. I mean, I don't get it. Like it doesn't look that nice. Like the bag, I don't know how much it costs or whatever. It looks like shitty. Like I have like cheap luggage that I like better than that.
You can't even roll that bag. That Gorbachev had. You can't even roll it. You have to carry it.
Yeah.
That's not luxurious.
Yeah, exactly.
But at that level, you have people that carry it for you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I suppose that's true.
I mean, I could go on about this shit forever, like when like luxury goods and whatever, like because one of the things that I think about a lot in my my consumer life or whatever is never to buy Goldilocks products, meaning either buy yourself something cheap that'll get you through whatever acute need that you need, or if you can, invest in something that will last you a lifetime or last you fucking 10 years, 20 years or whatever, something like that. And I think about this a lot, which is like finding value in things. Because like a lot of my clothes that I get, like most of the shit that I wear is from like Uniqlo. Why? Because, it's cheap as shit. And okay, so I get a season or two out of it and whatever, like, but if you need like a jacket or something that you're going to wear for like 10 years, then like cough it up and if you can and like buy something that'll last you a long time. The exception to that is like those, like you're describing, like those super upscale, which we're going to talk about until we're fucking blue in the face tonight, is like the super upscale luxury brands. Because like then what you're buying isn't like, the stitching is very good or the quality of the leather is very high or, this is going to last for a long time because it's got a warranty or something like that. At that point, you're just buying something for the brand. And the more I think about it, like the branding for nearly everything is pretty much as important as anything is. And the margins that they must make on this shit is like insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's social status. It's like you're buying some ideological abstract when you buy it. I looked it up. When you look up Gorbachev Louis Vuitton, right? And I guess they have like the bag from the ad. I don't know if it's like it was a seasonal thing or what it was, but why don't you take a stab at how much that bag is in that picture?
Okay. So it's just it's like kind of an overnight bag size thing.
Yeah, I mean it's the one in the picture. Yeah.
Are we talking about that particular bag or just that bag?
Oh no, that
bag?
like style of bag. I would imagine the that one with Gorbachev in that spread is owned by some psycho somewhere. It's incredibly expensive. Yeah. If you have it, send it to me. I'll take
100% chance that Gorbachev still has it.
I mean, he's dead.
It's buried with him.
Yeah, no, it's with him. It's with him.
In his
interned
tomb?
with him.
Yeah. Okay, but take a stab at how much you think that bag costs. Yeah,
$1,700.
It's like the size of like a large suitcase. I guess.
I was gonna say about 2,000 maybe.
1,700.
Wow, it's only like $1,200.
Really?
So, yeah, that's a steal.
That's a bargain. that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. That's easy money right there. Check out. Add to cart.
Yeah, here we go. At the $1,200 Patreon level,
you get a monogrammed Louis Vuitton bag.
Yeah.
Oh, if you
do $1,205, you get access to the Patreon, and we will buy and mail you a Louis Vuitton Gorbachev overnight bag. Jaguar Mark II not included.
Betrayal not included in the cost. There. National, social, political betrayal not
correct.
Not included in the price.
Now when I was a young boy, about the age of 5, my teachers taught me I could be the greatest man alive. They told me I could change the world, be whatever I wanted to be. There was no one in the world like me. Every one of us was so unique. I'd not be an average man. No, sir, I'd be no average man. So I have those big dreams.
Welcome back, everyone, to Eat the Rich. This is a show about our political economy, late-stage capitalism, and the millionaires, billionaires, and multinational corporations hell-bent on staving off its death rattle. I'm Dwight, and today we have with us Shane.
Hiya, folks.
And that's the NPR voice you're doing on the Patreon. And we've got Chris.
Hello.
So, interesting episode that we have for you guys today, because we're talking about the once richest person in the world. I mean, on the books at least.
Thrice richest person.
Thrice, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who is now also
richest
in the third
Europe.
place.
Yeah.
Richest in Europe.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're talking about Bernard Arnault. I believe our first French subject.
Yeah. There's gonna, and by the way, at least in my portion here, there's gonna be a lot of half-assed French pronunciations. Mm-hmm. So I'm apologizing in advance.
Mine is perfect. I'll just make that very clear from the outset. My French is astounding.
I'm gonna say this: like, I'm ready to. I don't speak French. I took no French in
made-up
high school or whatever.
It's fake.
I don't recognize the language of the French. Yeah.
I mean, and honestly, like, going through all of this, and I hope this isn't wrong to say, but I've had it up to fucking here. I've had quite enough. I'm over it. I won't be sad when we conclude this, because it's just too much. There's a bunch of OUXs, and it's just enough for me. Anyway, so Bernard Arnault. I mean, it's weird, because I also think that in our cursory research and stuff, and the stuff that we've gone through, I have to imagine that there's like a lot more material that's like in French that we just
absolutely.
may not have seen or whatever, and that's fine, and they can keep it in French. But
I watched a documentary that was in French. I had to read subtitles for this one.
Damn, man.
Wow, man.
That's the dedication I have here.
I went and got myself a plate of freedom fries just to get over it. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say. Everybody's fucking freaking out. They're talking about French submarines. I'll eat a submarine sandwich. We call it a hoagie down in fucking Valley. So let's get started on this. Bernard Arnault he's the richest man in Europe. He was once the I guess thrice the richest man in the world. Briefly overtaking Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. He's now the third richest person in the world. again on the books.
What, 185 million?
185. I just was gonna take a moment here to 185.4 billion according to Forbes's real-time billionaires list, but also Elon Musk has overtaken Bezos according to Forbes.
Which is insane to me. I just have to digress for 2 seconds to be like, I can understand maybe Jeff Bezos because Amazon is this fucking behemoth. Right. You can get your head around that, right?
Right.
There's
Elon Musk
there's warehouses,
makes fucking rockets that explode and cars that want to kill pedestrians.
Yes. Again, the fact that it's not, and I guess he has PayPal money and shit like that, but at the end of the day, most of his value is derived from Tesla, which, it's a scam company. They're not profitable. They only make money because they sell fucking, electric carbon credits or whatever to other car manufacturers. But anyway, back to Bernard Arnault. Please, Chris, tell us about his origin story.
Oh, sure. Okay, so, so Bernard Arnault, he's, I guess you'd call him, I don't know if you'd call him a fashion mogul. He's not a designer. He's not, he owns all these luxury brands and all these fashion companies. He owns Louis Vuitton, as we've mentioned. He also owns Christian Dior, Sephora, Marc Jacobs, Fendi, Dom Perignon. He also owns many, many, many luxury brands. He is the third richest man in the world currently. He was born in the town of Roubaix in 1949, which is in the north of France, right near the border with Belgium, and it's kind of like it was kind of like a textile town that ironically that he came from that was then decimated by deindustrialization later on, which he ironically helped in France by taking over all of these luxury textile manufacturing companies, and then moving those jobs, slashing the workforce in France and then moving those jobs to places with cheaper labor. He was born upwardly mobile family. His grandfather owned a manufacturing and construction firm, and the household he grew up with his parents and also his grandparents in the same house, and he was really close, I guess, to his grandmother. His grandmother was apparently really into Christian Dior, the brand, as he says it. His grandmother, and a lot of this. Let me say this. A lot of this material comes from that documentary that I was referring to. It's a French documentary. It was released in 2017. It's called The 30 Billion Euro Man. By the way, his net worth has increased by over 5 times since then. It's now 158 billion euros. Anyway, to hear him talk about it, and there's interviews with him in this documentary, and he had a very kind of strict education. His grandmother played a really fundamental role in his education, taught him piano and all this sort of stuff, and educational excellence was expected from him and drilled into him. In fact, there's an anecdote that they tell in the documentary. When his grandfather died, he I guess at the funeral or whatever, slipped a school report, a report card that he'd gotten a good award on into his grandfather's coffin.
Wow.
That he was then buried with it. But I guess, and he took this oath or whatever, that he, as he describes it, this very serious kind of oath to take over the family business and to not squander what the family had built. So
I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing. It's just
he will decimate and sell off the family company before he moves on to other things. He will sell off the family company. He definitely won't squander the family wealth, but he will sell off the family company as soon as he gets an opportunity.
Well, it's just business.
Right. But he went to, in 1971, he graduated from École Polytechnique, which is an engineering school. And once he graduated in 1971, he did what so many of the subjects we cover on this program do. He went to work at his father's business. He went up north back to Roubaix to help with the family business. And he was the one, and this would have been in the 70s. And, like I mentioned earlier, the company was mostly a construction company. And, again, this was a wealthy family that he came from. originally. I mean, construction. This is post World War I, post World War II France. A construction company, it's got to have a lot of business. There's a lot of rebuilding, a lot of construction and sort of stuff that needed to be done. So that was how they made the money. But once he got involved in the company, he convinced his father to sell off the construction firm and kind of move the company into luxury real estate. This was in the mid 70s with like a kind of a boom in leisure society. And what they were selling was like secondary residences, houses houses at the beach, houses in the mountains, stuff like that. And he invested 20,000 francs or however the hell you say that into a.
I'm already getting irritated.
I'm just gonna say francs into an advertising campaign. He invested in like television and radio commercials, which he hid from his father because his father didn't want to do that sort of stuff. But like the way he tells it, he invested this money secretly into these radio advertising campaign, and it was very successful, and the company's booming and all that sort of stuff. And so in the late 70s, in 1979, he's 30 years old at this time. He takes over the family business from his father, and then shortly after that, an interesting thing happens, and that's that in 1981, the socialist Francois Mitterrand is elected president of France, and a move that he will attempt to make more than once in his life. He leaves France and moves to the United States because he's afraid, as a business owner, that the socialist government is going to start taxing him more. So he moves to the United States.
The French are retreating.
It's funny in the documentary they ask him about this, and he's there's like a direct quote from him in there. He says like I wasn't fleeing taxes. I had no taxes to pay. He says I was drawn to the open sea. That's what he says. He says I was drawn to the open sea.
Shut the fuck up.
So he leaves France, he goes to the United States, where he lives for close to 3 years. He first went to Florida, and he lived in Florida for a little while and invested in real estate down there. And then he moved to Westchester County in New York, where he lived next door to a guy named another millionaire, John Fluge, who is a German-American millionaire who was at the time in the process of taking his company Metro Media private and then liquidating it and then making billions off of doing that. And maybe being inspired by this, but let me hear one thing first. I want to talk about. I'm about to get into talk about how he buys Christian Dior, how he comes to take it over. But there's another story that he tells in the documentary, and this was about his time in the United States. He talks about how he became inspired to, invest in these luxury brands and take them over and all this sort of stuff. And he's talking about being in a taxi in New York City, and he's talking to the taxi driver, and the taxi driver realizes he's from France, and he's like, "Oh, I love France," and blah blah blah, and all this sort of stuff. And then I guess he asks him who the president of France is, like you do if you're a dick, I guess. And you don't think the person's going to know.
Froggy there. Who's the president anyway over there?
Right, but he does, the guy doesn't know. He doesn't know who the president of France is, but he knows Christian Dior. He knows the brand. He knows that name. Like that's what he knows about France. And so that's, I guess, and this story may be bullshit because this was years before he ever bought Christian Dior. But I guess he likes to tell this story as some example of his business acumen. Because it was then I got the aha moment that this is an international brand that I could make a lot of money if I took this over and all that sort of stuff. So several years later, in the 80s, this is 1984. This is the group that owned Christian Dior at the time, the Bosac Group. Mm-hmm. The company was in decline at the time, and the government of France agreed to sell it for 1 franc, like a ceremonial cost of 1 franc, if Arnault would agree that no job losses could be assured. At the time, 15,000 employees the company had at the time. And so he takes the company over and immediately, like within the next 2 years, lays off 9,000 of the workers and like strips. And this was like a kind of like a conglomerate kind of company that owned Christian Dior and a bunch of other interests and brands and stuff. And so he like lays off 2/3 of the workforce, strips everything else that the company holds down and sells it off and liquidates it, and then only holds on to Christian Dior, because that's the one that's gonna be the really big moneymaker. And there's another story that's in the documentary that's interesting, because at this time he's only just taken over control of this group that is over top of Christian Dior, but he's in the offices of, and this is a story that the person who was the acting CEO of Dior at the time tells. He's in his office. Bernard Arnault comes by to like take a tour and see things and meet people, do all this sort of stuff. And Arnault asks him, he says, "I have a phone call to make. Can I borrow your office for a minute?" And it's like he goes, and the guy's like, Of course, please, make your phone call." He goes into the office, and then to hear this guy explain it, he just like, that's his office now, and he just like stays in there the rest of the day. And like the guy who's actually the CEO has to go like find another office to do his work or whatever fucking work he does in for the rest of the day. And this is how he basically forces this CEO out and like takes direct control as like the CEO of Christian Dior, and he becomes more has a hand in the direct the direct business of Christian Dior. And one of the things that they did, one of the things that he did was that at the time they were mostly invested in dresses and like custom dresses and stuff like that. But what Arnault did was expand Dior into selling accessories and selling like purses and stuff like that, and like things that are higher margin. Things that are sold more frequently. A very expensive custom dress is someone's only going to buy so many of those.
Right.
But things like handbags and accessories, you can make them on a production line and sell a lot of them, and you can sell them into emerging markets like Singapore and China and the UAE and places like that. And that's what they did, and that's how they expanded this business. A lot of their with Dior and also with Louis Vuitton, a tremendous amount of their business is done in Asia, done in China, done in Singapore and in places like that. But anyway, and there's interviews, with obviously in this documentary with Bernard Arnault himself, and also with with the people who were there, the people who were working, in the factories, in the textile, the workshops and the stuff like that, when he took over. And what he promised is that the aim of him taking over the company is to retain jobs. And of course, to hear the interview with the worker in the documentary, that he immediately, as soon as he took over, reneged on every promise, sold everybody out, and laid everybody off. Didn't care about the poor in the factories. And so throughout the 80s, after he takes over Dior. Then for the next 20 years, this was his first luxury brand that he takes over. Interesting little figure here from the documentary. For the next 20 years, beginning with the, I guess actually this is about where I'm going to pass it over to you, Dwight. But in 1989, I believe it was, then that's when he takes over Louis Vuitton. And then starting from the takeover of Louis Vuitton, and then for the next 20 years, he would acquire an average of 3 luxury brands per year. And that's clothing companies, handbags, watches, jewelry, perfumes, wine, champagne. That's all this sort of stuff. And like I mentioned earlier, one of the things that he does, and for as much as he likes to talk, when you hear him talk about this great pride that he has for France and the great pride that he has for these like flagship brands, like these luxury brands that are French and like very old. And as much as he likes to talk that talk, he immediately began moving jobs out of the country to Romania and Bulgaria and North Africa and places where he could pay people less for the exact same work.
What a fucking joke.
The mark of quality. The mark of luxury.
That's right.
So maybe Dwight, if you want to kind of pick up with Louis Vuitton from here.
I will. And I found it so interesting because there was a really interesting kind of like narrative article from the New York Times from last year called, it was specifically about Bernard Arnault, called Tiffany Deal is a signature move by the Sun Tzu of luxury.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which, like, right off the bat, I'm just like, I'm already fucking getting irritated, and you're not helping at all. But one of the things I wanted to flesh out about, back when he was in the early 80s, when he was living in Westchester, and he was, getting to know this guy, John Kluge, who had taken his own company private and then liquidated it and made billions doing so.
It's so funny how that works.
And there was a great line here, which I had to talk about because it's a little crossover with a previous episode that we had done, which it says, Mr. Arnault had also closely watched the success the investment firm KKR had with its aggressive leverage buyouts. And a little update for those that are into it. The guys, the co-CEOs for KKR have announced they're retiring, which is fucking better late than never. But I want to make that point there about the company that had been bought for 1 franc, the company called Boussac. That it's just like so funny to me that a lot of times, I mean, firstly, just, the guy's rich, right? He came from a very well-to-do family. He had inherited an executive position in the company. And then, in this kind of like deregulatory Thatcherite sort of Reaganist sort of thing going on in the 1980s, that there was all this deregulation and privatization, and this was no different, that he had taken over this, nationalized industry and then gutted it. It's just so funny to me that, like, oftentimes the huge billions that these people make, that these billionaires make, especially in this kind of like top 10 of the the Forbes International thing, it often comes from like government wealth, or like the wealth from, the people or whatever. And so I just want to read a little bit about this because I like the kind of narrative that they have here. And I'm going to flesh this out a little bit here. And so it reads here, after you, like you were saying, where they laid off 9,000 workers and basically stripped out the entirety of Boussac with the exception of Dior. It reads here in this New York Times article, a flurry of new nicknames. The Wolf in Cashmere, the Machiavelli of finance, came in 1989 when Mr. Arnault stormed the LVMH Citadel 2 years after the merger between the fashion house Louis Vuitton and the champagne and cognac producer Moet Hennessy. By the way, it was like an Irish guy named Hennessy that had gone to France to make cognac. Thought, in case you were wondering why it was like an Irish name. LVMH had been created on the premise that the combined group would be too large for a hostile raider. Instead, the siege came from within. Mr. Arnault, who had invested in the business in 1988, who had a divergent vision from Henri Racamier, who was Louis Vuitton's revered septuagenarian president, and ultimately turned on the executive, stripping him of his power and ousting him from the board, like you were saying.
There's another interesting point that was brought up in that documentary about this, and that was how Arnault got in the company in the first place, is because Louis Vuitton was already the target of this hostile takeover attempt by Guinness PLC.
Yes.
And Arnault joined the company under the guise of, I'm going to help you fend off this acquisition attempt, but was like secretly working with them and then became, majority shareholder.
Like so he went to get. Let me slow down. I'm getting fucking angry thinking about this. I'm getting revved up. He went out and got money to do this fucking hostile takeover of Louis Vuitton, right? Now this was interesting. It says here, in 1999, Mr. Arnault turned his eyes to another prize, Gucci, the Italian leather goods company, then run by Tom Ford, like the individual Tom Ford, and Domenico De Sole. He quietly amassed a 5% stake before what Vanity Fair called, and I don't know what this fucking French word means, but it says an Ali Frazier fight for the recherche set. I can't.
That was perfect. That was a good pronunciation.
Did you? Listen, I really appreciate that. If
that's
for
how
nothing
it's said
else,
in the native tongue.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Gucci called it a creeping takeover. Mr. Arnault upped his stake to 15%. Then 27%, then 35%, all the while insisting he wanted to be a supportive and passive partner. But they know fucking this guy, Bernie Arnault. No, he's a real son of a gun.
Yeah, that's how they talked in Gucci.
That was my French accent. Was that not clear?
The two Italian.
Yeah, listen, don't tell me what I am. All right. Oh, you're all the way on that side of New York Harbor. All right, French, Italian, it's all the same in the dark. It says here, the two sides finally agreed that in return for board representation, Mr. Arnault would freeze his stake. Mr. Desolé faxed him the paperwork. It came back unsigned. Then the guerrilla warfare began. Again, this is like super fucking like, this is not pre-internet, but just like, this is like the old world sort of thing. Like faxing back. He took the fax of the thing that just came in and just faxed it back to him without doing anything to it. Like, and that's like fuck you, which is really funny to me. But Mr. Desolé discovered a loophole that allowed him to issue shares with only board approval. And for every share that Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, that's Arnault, bought, he created more for his employees, diluting Mr. Arnault's stake. Then he agreed to sell 42% of the company to Francois Pinault of, oh God, here we go again, of Pinault Prétems Redoute, so he could save Gucci. LVMH sued in Dutch court, alleging mismanagement, and Mr. Desolé announced his rival could, quote, continue to torment us, but they're not going to get very far. So again, this became like, let's just say super messy. And at the end of the day, Bernard Arnault said like, hey man, this isn't going to work out. And he sold all of his shares for, it wasn't very lucrative for him. He only made $700 million doing it.
And again, this is the same thing he said about like the Louis Vuitton takeover and Dior as well, that he's doing what he's doing to protect the firm and to protect the interest of France, because this is a French company and it should be in French hands. This is what he said about Louis Vuitton. Another interesting thing I wanted to mention before we get too far away from the Louis Vuitton takeover is that there's a lot of accusations from both sides about like bugging offices and bugging like phone calls and stuff. And there's apparently hundreds of thousands of dollars that Dior paid to corporate intelligence agencies to help. Like he took the money from Dior, paid these like corporate intelligence agencies to apparently, I guess, like bug, like spy on people and bug the meetings, like during the middle of this takeover of Louis Vuitton, and they were saying that like they would check the like the offices at Louis Vuitton. They would have to check them before every meeting to like check for new recording devices, and they were saying that they would find a new one like every week or two.
Jesus Christ!
But Arnault claims that it was Louis Vuitton that was bugging him.
Le Pinkerton.
So anyway, so this is what happened here, and I just love this too here, where they were talking about like, once this had concluded, and Mr. Desolé, by the way, who is now the chairman of Tom Ford International, of course, Tom Ford had left Gucci, went and made his own brand and all that stuff, and this is just like a very Trump phrase to me, where it says, afterward, he said, Mr. Arnault contacted Mr. Desolé through one of his bankers and invited him to a private meeting where he was, quote, he was very rational and gracious. Who would say that in a conversation, that the person I was meeting with was very rational? Fucking insane.
Wasn't one of the other nicknames to mention in that article, it was called the Terminator after he did that?
Yeah.
He's very rational. I sounded like Steve Coogan doing fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger. Anyway, so the next thing that he had set his sights on was Hermes. Am I saying that? I mean, Hermes. Whatever. It's Hermes. This was, this very revered French luxury brand. And he had been gobbling up other sorts of like luxury brands within Europe, one of which was Bulgari, one of which was Loro Piana. But Hermes was the kind of like crown jewel that he really wanted to get. And it says here, I'm just reading again from this New York Times article, the super luxe, wildly successful Parisian leather house is run by the sixth generation of its founding family, which has been fiercely protective of maintaining control. Although the company went public in 1993, the family retained a 78% stake. And this gets fucking sick, honestly. Again, it just like, to me, reads into like the pathology that these like rich billionaire psychos, the backwards worldview with which they, see the world. It says in 2001, LVMH quietly bought an initial stake of 4.9% through subsidiaries and continued to accumulate shares by buying equity derivatives through financial intermediaries, but always keeping holdings below 5%. In 2010, LVMH, again that's Arnault, announced that it had acquired 14% of its rival. By December 2011, that had risen to 23%, prompting Patrick Thomas, then the Hermès chief executive, to react with a notoriously crude statement, which I'm going to regrettably read right now, which it says, again, this is the fucking CEO of Hermès said this about Arnault trying to, own this company. He says, "If you want to seduce a beautiful woman, you don't start by raping her from behind." What the fuck? What the fuck? Like, at a news conference, he said this. Like, that's insane shit to say privately. Like, to somebody, at home. Like, on a fucking news conference. It's just fucking sick. Again, like, the pathology of these guys that, think that... What is the coddling forces around them that allows them to just, spout this insane shit? It's crazy.
That probably sounded really elegant in French, though.
I think...
I'm sorry.
But this guy, it's a language of love.
This guy, Patrick Thomas, he was... What is... All right, I'm on to a different Patrick Thomas. Turns out it's a pretty common name. But anyway. Again, he said, hey, I want him to sell his stake so he's only 10%. That's not the case. Of course, Mr. Arnault did not. And in 2013, the LVMH stake in Hermès grew to 23%. But in here, it says, it's interesting. It says, finally, in 2017, Mr. Arnault appeared to walk away, swapping out the last Hermès shares as part of a wider corporate restructuring at LVMH in order to help pay for the 25% of Dior that it did not already own. So I guess they were just fucking doing stock buybacks, right? Dior minority investors could choose payment in cash or stock of Hermès, helping Mr. Arnault cash out without paying taxes on a sale. In the end, Group Arnault had $5 billion in profit. So, I mean, what we learned about him is that he is this kind of corporate raider, and he had used not only government money, not only his family money, but also money from other large multinational conglomerate entities to be able to kind of fund these crazy M&As. And again, this isn't anything crazily different that private equity does, right? Where you buy a brand and you strip it to its component
exactly.
parts, or you strip it, you suck every little bit of currency out of it and sell off any bit of it that you find, that doesn't bring your private equity group utility. And he explicitly said that when he said that he took cues from KKR and their takeover strategy. But one of the things that was very interesting was that he was like, hey, I want to avoid taxes. Hey, back in the 80s, I didn't like the socialist government. Hey, let's see how we can get away with this. And he decided, maybe I should just stop being French.
But he loves France. He's so proud of France.
Isn't he? So from USA Today, I'm reading here, and this was from 2012. Bernard Arnault, head of the luxury group Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, became a cause célèbre when it became disclosed, that wasn't that bad, that he had applied for Belgian citizenship. Even though Arnault insisted he would remain in France and pay taxes, the move stoked fears and anger that he and other iconic magnates might leave France to avoid a plan by the Socialist Party to soak the rich as a way out of the country's debt woes. How crazy is that? You tax these insane people to pay for actual programs. Recently elected President François Hollande's socialist government introduced France's 2013 budget with steep tax increases on the rich that include a 75% tax rate on those earning more than $1.3 million for 2 years, and a new 45% tax rate for revenues over $193,000. Higher taxes on businesses are proposed as well. So again, just for a second, can you imagine if the United States tried to levy tax on income from the rich of 75%? Just for a second, again, for a country in which the likes of Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, and Mark Zuckerberg have paid $0
right
in tax, a 0% tax rate, effective tax rate.
Well, I mean, the French have a history of showing them what happens.
See, and that's
yeah.
That's what's redeeming the French for me today. Is just remembering that in this golden time in the 1700s that they said like, "I'll show you." Let's fucking what was it? The oyster of a chicken or something like that. Where they're just like, "Are you fucking shitting me?" And then 2 weeks later, they're storming the Bastille and saying, "Hey, let's separate here the fucking C5 and C6 vertebrae here. I think that's a good place." Anyway, it's funny to me that he was just like, "Hey, I don't want to pay taxes so much." Again, even if I had 1%, if I had 0.01% or whatever of his net worth, like I couldn't even spend that in my lifetime. What the fuck would I do with that?
Hot Tub City.
I'd buy
immediately.
Dude, I would buy a fucking hot tub.
A hot tub in every room.
That's not a bad idea, bro.
You're just stepping in and out of a series of hot tubs, one room to the next. Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're dehydrated, you're pruned.
Fine.
You can like your skin.
You don't have to do deals at that point. You're fine. You're good.
Your skin is sloughing off. But eventually, and this is happening to him, to Bernard Arnault as well, but for unrelated reasons. Because he looks like the cross between a vampire and a Bond villain too.
He is a very weird looking guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got that fucking narrow ass head. I mean, for a country with such incredible cuisine, I'd start to get concerned when a guy looks as gaunt as this guy is. I mean, his cheeks are sunken in, and is like he has anyway. I say all that to say that he had said and asserted that I'm going to become a Belgian citizen so that I can stop paying French taxes, you socialists. Mm-hmm. And I also find it ironic as well that since the kind of like moderate government of Macron has taken power, that his net worth has quadrupled or quintupled or whatever. But he has rescinded the fact that he was thinking about becoming a French citizen.
Belgian citizen.
Excuse me, a Belgian citizen.
Vehemently denies it. Is offended. Yeah. He actually he walks off the interview in that documentary when they ask him about this.
Who's he fucking kidding? What an idiot, man. Oh, one last thing I do want to say before I turn it over to you, Shane, which is interesting, is that he was, again, a crossover episode. I don't remember where it came up. I think I don't even remember at this point. But do you remember the 1MDB scandal in Malaysia that we talked about with like Goldman Sachs, siphoning government money and all that stuff? He was from 2010 to 2013 a member of the board of advisors of the 1MDB fund.
That's great.
I thought I would just mention that.
Of course.
Hey, I did just want to mention one more thing real quick from that documentary that I found interesting about the manufacturing for Louis Vuitton. So Louis Vuitton, they say like made in France on all of their shit. And some of the stuff is made in France. They have a small workshop of like tailors who like a lot of their like custom made, custom sewn stuff is made in France. But the stuff like the purses and the boots and the accessories and the stuff that's like that they're making the most of their money off of, that stuff is made at a factory in Romania where they make 200 euros a month.
Jesus.
And this was in 2017, and they at least for the boots, they assemble like 70. They were saying for like most products, they assemble like 75 to 80% of the product there, right? Specifically, they were talking about the boots. Like they do everything. They cut the leather, they sew the shit, they do everything. All they do is send the boot and then like the sole of the boot. They like send that, I guess, in two pieces to France, where they then like put those two pieces together and then put like the made in France label on it. Yeah.
It's a nice little scam.
Right. Yeah.
Unreal.
The stuff I have, I was interested in looking at like political connections, of which there are many, and I'm sure there's a lot more than even what I was able to find in my kind of cursory research stuff. And Dwight, I think you mentioned, right, like, there's probably a lot more stuff in French that goes into more details.
God forbid.
And to be honest, a lot of it is pretty boring. But there's a few interesting things to pull out that at least tickled me to a certain extent. Now, in reference, I guess a good place to start is, since you were bringing up the whole like move to Belgium thing, Dwight. One funny article I found, also from France 24. From 2012, which was right around the time that was happening. I'm not even going to read the headline of it, but I'll just read a little bit from the article because I think it'll be self-evident and kind of fun. So reading from this article, France's richest man, Bernard Arnault, is suing newspaper Liberation for public insult after its front page headline on Monday ordered him to, quote, "Get lost, you rich idiot." The left-wing daily was objecting to his decision to seek Belgian nationality. France's richest man, billionaire Bernard Arnault, has come under fire, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Okay, so I looked into it a little bit. Liberation is like a left-wing magazine. It was started in the 70s, actually, by Sartre and some other people, so it's kind of interesting. But jumping back to the article here, Liberation's front page headline on Monday screamed, "Get lost, you rich idiot," in homage to the infamous outburst by former President Nicolas Sarkozy, a friend of Arnault's, who memorably told a farmer to get lost, "you poor idiot." Even if he denies he will go into exile for financial motives, Bernard Arnault's request for Belgian nationality appears to be the symbol of selfishness by the most wealthy, Liberation added on their front page. Arnault's lawyer announced that he was suing Liberation for public insult over the headline, calling it vulgar and violent. Arnault has refused to accept the slur, and I guess here the mean idiot, like he's pretending like he takes great offense to this.
He's very oppressed, Shane, so...
Yeah, exactly. And he immediately ordered his lawyers to open legal proceedings against the paper for public insult. Bernard Arnault has no other choice given the extreme vulgarity and brutality, a statement from the billionaire's lawyers read. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, outspoken leader of the Left Front coalition of far-left political parties, was even more stinging in his attack on Arnault, saying, quote, "People like him were parasites."
That's right.
And on the other end of the political spectrum, Mélenchon's nemesis, the far-right National Front leader Marine Le Pen, also waded into the row, saying Arnault was guilty of, quote, "scandalous behavior." I included that little bit there. The article goes on to give some more context and stuff, but of immediate relevance here in terms of where his like kind of political allegiances lie. Like it's mentioned here, he was a friend of Sarkozy's, right? Like he considered himself a personal friend. There's a lot of photographs and stuff of them together. And I'm not an expert in French politics by any means, but you know, the general headline is Sarkozy is like a center-right kind of figure. He was president from 2007 to 2012, something like that. That in terms of like Arnault's like political aspirations or his inclinations, it's never super clear, but it's obvious you can kind of get from context, right, in terms of like who his friends are and who he hates, right? He obviously hates the socialists, the left in general. He's not particularly fond of the extreme right, at least in France, and we'll get into internationally some differences that may emerge there. But he's basically cozy with, you know, the idea of like the kind of pro-business right? Like that's his area of interest. And in fact, in the famous 2017 French presidential election, which saw this emerging figure of Macron versus, you know, the insane fascist Marine Le Pen, he wrote an op-ed, Bernard Arnault did, endorsing Macron over Le Pen.
Interesting.
And of course, you know, Macron won. And I was going to read some of it, but again, it's very boring. It's all this kind of boilerplate stuff you could imagine, you know, like, someone like Le Pen doesn't represent French values. We should be more connected to Europe. I mean, there's the obvious, like, kind of multicultural argument against that, but you can also imagine that partially, based on what you were saying, Chris, right, the idea of becoming a more protectionist or isolationist, like, national thing, right, is bad for business for him if he has factories all over Europe, right? Like, you have to allow the market to be open. But one thing that is of interest, again, and just talking in terms of some personal connections, there's an article about him writing the op-ed from wwd.com from May 5th, 2017, article by Jennifer Wheel and Alex Wynn called "Arnault Endorses Emmanuel Macron in French Presidential Race." Basically gives the information I just did, but there's a little bit of interesting stuff at the bottom here. So reading from this, Macron does have some ties to the fashion industry. He is reportedly close to entrepreneur and tech billionaire Xavier Niel, partner of Delphine Arnault, executive vice president of Louis Vuitton and daughter of Bernard Arnault.
No way.
It is said that she offered Macron's wife, Brigitte Trogneux, butchering these French names. I don't care. Style advice during his time as a minister. Trognu has often worn Louis Vuitton and twice attended the brand's fashion shows. She has also been spotted at Dior, another brand within the LVMH fold. Bernard Arnault described Macron's program as a path of, quote, hope and reason, noting that it was built on the conviction that the private sector is the key to job creation. Quote, and this is him speaking, I share this founding conviction without reserve. A company that is not hindered in its development, that is not thwarted from its growth path by unreasonable taxation or a cumbersome bureaucracy, has no other project but to invest, innovate, and create sustainable employment, said the executive. He concluded by saying it is without hesitation that I will vote for Emmanuel Macron. End quote. And that's a particularly funny thing. I mean, it's the same kind of bullshit, jobs creator language you always hear, but especially in light of what you were talking about, Chris, the idea that like he's a job creater at all. Like he's very like notably a job destroyer. Yeah. Like that's like even in the capacity as that. So he's been a Macron ally, again, sort of very friendly with him. And between 2020 and up till now, he's been embroiled up until very recently in this behind-the-scenes battle for this French radio station called Lagardère or Lagardère. Again, somebody correct my pronunciations, whatever. There's a piece from Reuters from December 17, 2020, that gives a little bit of the background of this, and I would like to read some of it here. The title of this is Macron and the Moguls Inside the Fight Over a French Fox News. So reading from this, behind the corporate battle for French media company Lagardère, there's a political tug-of-war involving the country's richest man, a media magnate, and President Emmanuel Macron. At stake is control of one of France's best-known private radio stations and its power to sway voters ahead of France's presidential election in 2022, when Macron could face off once again with far-right leader Marine Le Pen. Macron fears that if media tycoon Vincent Bolloré wins Lagardère, he could use its Europe 1 radio to inundate the airwaves with right-wing views and make the president's re-election bid even tougher, two sources close to the matter said. So when Bolloré's Vivendi built a stake, I'm assuming that should be bought a stake in Lagardère in April, Macron's office relayed its concerns to Bernard Arnault, the billionaire founder of luxury goods empire LVMH and one of the president's early supporters, the sources said. The situation is being followed closely from on high, one of the two sources told Reuters. Now it gets into some more of the details here, but the sort of headline thing of interest here is like, what is the purpose of building relationships, right, with the uber wealthy, if you're a political figure, right? There's the obvious thing of like direct donation, raising money, what have you. But the other hand is you can do this. You can call in your buddy and basically be like, hey, like, can you help me out with this battle, with this, like, whatever, potentially like French Fox News is the way it's put here, and stop it by buying your way in, which is also, again, extremely funny given what we've been discussing, where it's like his track record of getting into companies is always based on the premise that this is like for the good of the people, and then the second that he actually has control, he just decimates it. Anyway, it's a long, storied battle between the two of them, and as far as I can tell, that ended as of just a month ago. In September, Arnault just walked away. I guess he sold his stake in the radio station, and he walked away. It was sort of unclear why. Maybe Macron got on his bad side. Maybe Arnault was just getting bored or frustrated or whatever, that he wasn't able to wrest control. But now, apparently, the whole like fear is like, oh my God, now this is open to a hostile takeover. It could become this French, right-wing propaganda outlet, and could potentially help Le Pen. I guess we'll see as that goes. But again, it's interesting to think about why he might have walked away at that particular time. Again, that'll be an ongoing thing we can see play out. So in France, again, mostly sided with the sort of center-right, pro-business political factions. What about internationally? And here's where maybe it gets a little bit more fun and a little bit more familiar for our listeners, depending on where you're from. He's had a number of meetings with Trump, particularly during the Trump presidency, all of which are very funny. Reveal, like, I don't think anything particularly deep about Arnault's personal politics, except for the fact that, like, he doesn't care, ultimately. Because, like, a lot of, business magnate tycoon people that we've covered on the show, you know, ultimately, like, if they're not particularly ideological, it just means that they're going to be interested in their own class interests, right? And their own personal wealth. And if it so happens that, like, some fucking, you know, foaming at the mouth fascist is going to help them do that, and they're like, all right, that's fine. You know, like, even if they're not personally, like, very mean or whatever. So, you know, he had this meeting with Trump right before the inauguration in January of 2017 at Trump Tower. His son was there. His son, Alexander, was and he's been at a number of his meetings. And I think his son is the CEO of one of the subsidiary companies under the Louis Vuitton umbrella. I can't remember. It might have been Dior. I forget. But anyway, you know, he met with him. I do want to read just this one funny quote because, again, you can imagine it in the Trump voice, right? This is from an LA Times article from January 2017 about this. And so I'll just read. This is like the little quote about, you know, the meeting with Trump. Arnault is looking at sites in North Carolina, and Trump said he is also considering a location in the Midwest. Quote, one of the great men, you know that, right? And they all love this country, Trump said of Arnault after their meeting. They're going to do some wonderful things in this country, he said, adding jobs, a lot of jobs. And so the implication here, right, is that Arnault was looking to expand his company's interest in factory and manufacturing in the United States. And he managed to do that then in 2019. And so I'm going to read from a New York Times piece from 2019 by Vanessa Friedman called When Brand Trump Met Brand Vuitton. I'm going to read a number of chunks out of this, and we can stop and go with it. But I think this is like a really fun read, or at least it was enjoyable for me, even as horrible as it is. So reading from here. On Thursday, two of the most powerful brands in politics and high fashion collided in Johnson County, Texas, a rural area a half-hour's drive south of Fort Worth. They met in a blur of pomp, supple leather, and mutual appreciation as President Trump joined Bernard Arnault, founder and chairman of LVMH, the largest luxury group in the world, to cut the symbolic ribbon on a new Louis Vuitton workshop. Two entourages were there. On one side, Ivanka Trump, Commerce Secretary Wilbur L. Ross Jr., Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia, and on the other, Mr. Arnault's second son, Alexander, Chief Executive of Rimowa. That's right. That's the one that it's a German brand. It's a German like luggage brand. That's the one that he's in charge of. And I saw another thing where they were like, you know, we've been around since like the 1890s, and it's like, is that what you want to brag as a German company? But in any case, an assortment of other Louis Vuitton executives, including Michael Burke, the CEO. Outside, a herd of 14 red Angus cattle roamed a nearby field, with a Brahmin bull, also named Michael, among them. Inside the 100,000-square-foot building of glass and stone, an oil portrait of the brand's founder by Alex Katz hung on a wall, next to a poster of George Washington, overlooking rows of shiny white sewing machines and trays of glinting gold handbags hardware. An American flag was displayed next to a French flag, next to a Texas flag. This is some place, said Mr. Trump, standing on a makeshift stage in front of a backdrop studded with spools of thread, like concept art. Earlier, he had been given a brief show and tell on the workshop and had gotten to hoist one of the LV monogram bags. You can imagine him just holding it up, how he likes to hold shit up.
He loves that.
And to watch an artisan at work. He said Mr. Arnault was a, quote, artist and a visionary who was making a great investment in Texas and American jobs. Then he said Louis Vuitton, and he pronounced it Vuitton, a name I know very well. It cost me a lot of money over the years. Next to him, Mr. Arnault grinned. As jobs were discussed, he gave a thumbs up. Later, the men moved to the blue and gold Louis Vuitton ribbon and stood side by side with their scissors, flanked by their teams. And so I found the video of them doing the cut, and it's really funny.
Can we please see it?
Yeah. I don't know how well this is going to play over audio, but I really, really recommend, if you're listening to this, to check out this video. It's very short.
Look at these bags. Oh my God.
There he is. There's our big boy.
Arnault is like half the width of Donald Trump.
Yeah. I mean, just the image of the two of them standing together is kind of fun and striking. And then you can see Ivanka is there as well. So I'm going to press play now.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Who counts to 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's an instant classic as far as I'm concerned. The second I saw that, I was surprised I had not seen it before. But yeah, the other funny thing is they're all standing in a row cutting the same ribbon, and Arnault can't get his fucking scissors to work, which is kind of funny just from the consideration of, like, again, like he has no connection to his trade.
Yes.
Right? like the most basic fucking act, cutting a ribbon. He can't manage to accomplish.
Fucking hilarious. What a joke, dude.
Let me read a little bit more from this article. But what was LVMH, which also owns brands such as Dior, Givenchy, Marc Jacobs, and Sephora, and has numerous American celebrities on its payroll, getting out of it? Besides becoming the first major fashion group to so publicly align itself with the president, of course. But with all the immediate brand equity risks and potential rewards if Mr. Trump wins a second term that implies. Not that the group would put it that way exactly. What Mr. Arnault said was, quote, "We are very honored to have the President of the United States coming for the opening." He also said, quote, "I am not here to judge his types of policies. I have no political role. I am a business person. I try to tell him what I think for the success of the economy of this country and the success of what we are doing." In an interview earlier, Mr. Burke noted Mr. Trump was a, quote, "democratically elected president," and if that president, it's such a good thing when you have to, like, assert that. And if that president wanted to come christen a new workshop, well, quote, "how should we react?" As for the fact that the event just happened to be sandwiched between a re-election fundraiser and a rally, quote, "we have nothing to do with the timing." This whole article is interesting, but I want to just jump around here in the interest of time. One little interesting background bit. Mr. Arnault first met Mr. Trump, he said, in New York in the 1980s, and when the new president invited him to Trump Tower in January 2017, he went, along with his son, Alexandra. That was when he and Mr. Trump first discussed his plans to open a new facility in the United States, and Mr. Trump said that when that happened, he would go to the opening. Mr. Arnault also attended the Trump's first state dinner for President Emmanuel Macron of France, to which Mr. Macron's wife, Brigitte, wore Louis Vuitton. Vuitton has become a sort of de facto wardrober to the French First Lady. Melania Trump often chooses Dior, another LVMH brand, for her public appearances. According to Mr. Burke, Mr. Arnault and Mr. Trump, quote, "have regular conversations." Though when asked if they were friends, Mr. Arnault looked surprised and said no.
Burned.
And then just one last little chunk here about, like, what the significance of this particular facility is. There are already 2 Louis Vuitton workshops in California in San Dimas and Irwin. For the last 30 years, approximately half the bags Vuitton sold in the United States have been made in the United States. And the company has had what Mr. Burke called a, quote, "special relationship with the U.S. since Georges Vuitton, son of Louis, attended the Chicago's World Fair in 1893. Company executives had been looking for another American base of operations to satisfy local demand in what is their largest market. They considered North Carolina, but chose to buy the approximately 265 acres in Texas instead, in part because of its central location and, they said, coastal accessibility, and in part because of Texas's history as a leather working center. Yeah, right. That last part is definitely for real. Part of the deal was a 10-year, 75% tax abatement of about $91,900 a year, although Mr. Burke said that was immaterial. The county also agreed to widen the local roads, add a roundabout for Vuitton trucks, put in high-speed internet cables, and add streetlights. In return, Vuitton has promised 1,000 jobs. The company signed President Trump's Pledge to America's Workers, an education and training initiative, the week before the opening. However, currently there are only 150 people employed in Texas. There are another 760 in California, though that still makes Vuitton the county's 4th largest employer. Mr. Burke declined to reveal how much the Texas facility cost, but Mr. Trump announced it in his speech, $50 million. A Vuitton spokesman later confirmed the number. What I love about this is just the little sprinkles of details of, like, what a fucking buffoon Trump is, too, where he just, like,
Yes.
reveals. After being, like, claiming to be such a great, like, fucking, businessman or whatever, he just, like, blunders and just, like, says all the secrets out loud, and then everybody has to, like, cover up for him.
It's so good.
Well, all the raw materials, including the leather, the machinery, and even the thread, are imported from Europe. The employees are local, and the bags produced, which include the Neverfull, Neon, and Matisse, among others. I guess those are the styles. They're labeled Made in USA. According to Mr. Burke, the company derives no discernible tax benefits from its American handbag production thanks to the current low-duty environment, though in the case of a trade war between the United States and Europe, that obviously would change. In his back and forth with reporters during the factory event, Mr. Trump had addressed the same question a little more excitedly. Quote, I can't tax him because he moved to the United States. He has no tariffs whatsoever because he's in the United States, so we're very happy about that. Very happy. End quote. Again, fun because you can kind of sprinkle, the little colorful Trump stuff in there. But, what I think is interesting here, and I think it's sort of telling, and the point is made a little bit in this article, but a few others that basically, Trump's whole kind of tariff trade war thing that he was doing with China, he was always leveraging to threaten to do that with Europe as well.
Yes.
And so there was this concern, right? Especially with luxury products, right? That's a very tariffable duty kind of thing, right? You can put, you can make it basically economically unfeasible.
Sorry, if I can just interrupt real quickly. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that he did do a tariff on French wine that was reversed by the Biden administration in March of this year, 2021.
Yes. So the idea is what is part of what is the goal for Arnault then, right? In terms of establishing a relationship with him, being friendly, being positive, is now I can open up a factory here, right? And so now I can make the stuff locally. Of course, they're already doing that, but to expand that in case of, some kind of escalatory trade war. Also, around the same time as all this was going on, and again, him being sort of friendly with Trump, and also inviting him to the event, which Trump loves to do, just on an interpersonal level. It's the best thing he does is these stupid events, right? Where it's ribbon cutting ceremonies is what he's primed to do, and he's so excited. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Again, the counting to 5 is insane to me.
It's wonderful. So simultaneous to that going on, why do you cozy up to him? Why do you let him come, even though he's politically volatile in the United States? Particularly polarizing figure, right? Could hurt your brand. Well, also this is around the time that the acquisition of Tiffany & Co. is going on, and I think Dwight, you or Chris, one of you guys mentioned it.
Yep.
And it was occurring around then, the beginning part of the deal. And it was finally finalized in January of this year. And of course, Tiffany & Co. is an American company. It makes those little silver jewelry things, whatever the fuck.
That's right. That's correct.
But you probably know what they do.
But I'm a big customer of Tiffany & Co.
Yeah. I figured you'd have the little heart.
Cufflinks mostly.
Yeah. And they acquired. They went through. They did the buyout. I don't know if you guys already looked it up, but you know how much they spent?
No.
To buy Tiffany & Co.?
All right.
Take a stab.
170 million.
Okay.
171 million.
$16.2 billion.
Hey, I won.
Man.
Chris, by default, wins.
Chris got it.
That's an extra 10 points in the next trivia episode we do. But yeah, I mean, when you control that much money, I mean, that's an impossible buy. Nobody could fucking afford that. The closest thing I could think of when I was thinking about that was Disney acquiring IP, we talked about, buying Star Wars for $4 billion. Who the fuck has $16 billion to spend? Right, on acquiring stuff. That's of course somebody who can throw around that kind of money.
Right.
And so I guess the last thing, it brings us to politically wise, right? That finalized just before Trump left office, very graciously as he did, not kicking and screaming. But we mentioned it earlier. In the middle of the pandemic, Arnault's personal fortune dipped because apparently, I guess when we were initializing mass graves in this country, people were not particularly interested in buying a $2,000 piece of luggage or a handbag or whatever. So at one point, he lost $30 billion in his net worth during the early stages of the pandemic. But boo-hoo for him. But then, as we mentioned earlier, he became the wealthiest man alive again twice, January 2020 and then August 2021, sort of hovering between 180 and $200 billion worth, and now he's at 185, right? Is what we determined earlier. He's third richest man. And so what do you do then, over the course of the pandemic? Obviously everything was disrupted, right? Manufacturing is disrupted, commerce is disrupted. You might see a dip in your own personal fortune. What is this all ultimately for? What are you doing it for? Why do you continue to keep this shit open and keep trying to sell it? Like, he's in his 70s. Like, what is the goal?
Right.
Like, what is the goal to have all this money? So here is an article from last month. I'm just going to read the first couple paragraphs because I think they're funny. Again, this is from wwd.com again, by Joel Diederich. French president previews Bernard Arnault's latest blockbuster art show. Paris. Art, luxury, and a dash of geopolitics converged at the Fondation Louis Vuitton on Tuesday as LVMH boss Bernard Arnault gave French President Emmanuel Macron a private preview of his latest blockbuster exhibition, organized with the help of the Russian government. It was the latest show of unity between the two men after Macron's appearance at the inauguration of the Samaritaine department store in June. The French leader and First Lady Brigitte Macron joined diplomats and museum officials for the evening visit, followed by a concert led by Russian conductor Valery Gergiev. It has long been my dream to present this exceptional collection in Paris, Arnault said in a speech. Bringing all these paintings over in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic was quite difficult, but despite the challenges of the current health crisis, we finally managed to put on this beautiful show, which I think will be a great success. End
Fucking
quote.
hell.
So that's your priority then, you're this uber rich man. Like, what could you do? How could you enrich, after all these claims that we've gone over, like, oh, everything I do is for the people, I'm interested in French culture and promoting French culture. In the midst of this fucking pandemic, what do? You host a private little art party for the president, Russian diplomats or whatever, and I guess you're just your other wealthy friends. And there's like pictures of the event. You can see the staff is masked and the attendees are not. And just looking at that is just so fucking like heartbreaking and awful, right? And I mean, here's just a picture I'll send to you guys in the Discord channel here, just to give you a sense. It's him next to Macron, next to a painting. I mean, again, it's really like despicable and weird, but it's like that's what the other thing that Arnault gets out of it, right? Like that's what he gets around throwing his weight with the fucking president of France, right? Is like, I get to have the prestige of the French president and the first lady, like wearing Louis Vuitton at my fancy party.
This picture looks like some Wes Anderson shit.
It does, actually.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it kind of has that vibe.
I love Macron holding his mask.
Yeah.
Oh, they're both holding masks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, again, not the most outlandish, at least so far as I could find, not the most outlandish in terms of his, like, political contributions and associations, but pretty bad, in the way you'd probably expect, just kind of like a rich plutocrat, like,
exactly,
just like sort of vaguely apolitical, vaguely evil,
right,
like just interested, obviously hates the left, but also doesn't really like the super far right, unless they're in America, then it's fine.
To mention his philanthropy, he's got he opened an art museum like with to display his own art collection. He spent $100 million to open an art museum, just to exhibit his own art collection. But like he called, like in the documentary, he talks about it like calling it his gift to France.
His gift to France.
I stole all this art from the French.
Yeah. My collaborating father hid art for the Nazis, and now I'm displaying it for you.
What was remember in the very first episode when we were talking about the Waltons?
Yeah.
They made some kind of like ridiculous museum thing like that you had to go. It was like on a fucking what do they call it? A ground escalator.
Yeah,
a ground. A funicular. No, that's not right. That's when you
I
go
don't know
up.
what the fuck you call it, but
the thing they got in the airport or whatever. Fucking a ground escalator. I get you.
Yeah, floor escalator. Yeah,
a moving sidewalk.
That's right.
There you go.
It's just like what you said, Chris. I just did the math, like up against his net worth, like $100 million for this, fucking whatever. Which again, like $100 million, like any one of us would never figure out a way to spend that in our grandchild's lifetimes. Like, there's just no way. But that is only 0.05% of his net worth. Like, it's a rounding error. Like, he could lose $100 million. Or fuck, he lost $30 billion, and it was just like because of stock fluctuation or whatever.
Right.
Like, it's just, there's like no even way. Like, I love that word you introduced to me, Shane. Superliminal. Like, there's just like no.
It's supraliminal, by the way. But
What is it?
Supra.
Fucking delinquent shit. That's what I get for going to fucking public school my whole fucking life.
You can go again.
You typed it so that I could understand.
They hyphenated it for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just because if you like it so much, I want
Am
you to
I
get it
dumb?
right. No, you're not dumb. I'm trying to
This
save
is his
you.
gift to you. This is his act of
Exactly.
philanthropy. Yeah.
I'm dumb. Anyway,
No, you're good,
it's
you're
just,
good.
yes, it's, fuck, I've said that so many times as superliminal.
Supra. Yeah, super.
I said it
That's okay.
so
we can,
many
we can,
times. I said
we
it
can go back
literally-
revisionistly and just
No,
every
I've said it
editing.
in conversations in my personal life. Like, it's all, and they're just like, man.
I mean, all words are made up.
Yeah.
You know, if
And
that
I
makes
say
you
it
feel
like
any better.
so authoritatively too. I'm just like,
Yeah.
well, it's actually like, you know how we have like subliminal, but it's actually like superliminal. Fucking idiot, man! I have to apologize to so many people. No, I'm just
good,
gonna
you're
gonna
good,
fucking
you're good.
double down. I'm just gonna double down.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
Yeah,
fine.
no,
Make
and
it your own
anybody
thing.
can do
Yeah.
it. Anybody can do it.
Yeah,
It's superliminal.
super duper liminal.
It's. I'll tell you, folks.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I've had a lot of bags.
Super.
I bought a lot of women a lot of bags. Trust me. And those the bags from Louis Vuitton. They're super liminal. The Louis Vuitton. They're super liminal, folks.
Imagine that the Gorbachev ad with him with the Louis Vuitton bag, but then it's
Oh
like
my
Trump
God.
is sitting next to him as well, and he's like, Gorby, great bag.
I love
Love
the
it.
picture. I love seeing you in the back of the car on the FDR. You're on the FDR. You're behind the concrete. A lot of graffiti. A lot of sad what they did to the FDR.
Oh man.
Oh God. Yeah, this dude sucks, man. I just give us 30 billion. Forget it. I can't do it. It's too much for my mind. It's superliminal.
I want to watch this Trump thing one more time. It's so
Yeah,
funny,
dude, please.
It's so good, and I'll just play out the whole thing here. It's
I'm
like 30
surprised.
seconds
Bing,
long.
bing, bing.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh my
Look at this
fucking
fucking
God,
idiot
dude.
with the scissors.
And I don't mean to be funny, but like Trump is like what? He's like 6'3" or something. And there's some stiff on the end of the line that's like towering over him.
Oh my! Oh,
Look at
that's
that
his son.
fucking
That's
dude.
That's
Kushner.
Arnault's son.
What's wrong with that guy? He's literally like 6'8".
Oh, Alexandra. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Arnault's pretty tall. He's taller than Trump.
He is. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he's like you got to be like 6'4", 6'5" or something. Like that.
Can you
That
imagine
dude is a
like
fucking tree.
that being so rich
Do it
that
again.
you don't know how to use scissors? Like you've never used scissors. You've never had to use scissors.
Yeah.
Chris, you fucking pleb. You're using scissors like a peasant.
That'll be Arnault's punishment.
Even
We'll
Trump
put him in a wet paper
even
bag.
Trump can use scissors.
And give him a pair of scissors. And so you have to make your way out of here, Mr. Arnault, or we won't feed you.
Well, I was
he'll
thinking
just
since
be
he's
stuck in
drawn
there.
to the open sea, we send him to the open sea with a pocket full of rocks.
Not a bad idea. No, we put him out in the open sea in like a life raft, like a vinyl life raft, but with pockets full of scissors.
No, instead of a raft, we just give him one of the shitty bags. And he's just like waiting in the water with his ass stuck in a fucking Louis Vuitton bag.
It's only
really
$1,200,
like,
so you can get two.
I don't know, like, I don't know what it is with luxury goods. I understand that there's some social status appeal. Like, I mean, I intellectually can wrap my head around it, but and sometimes when you see like high designer luxury goods, like you look at it and I can see, like, I understand why somebody thinks that's aesthetically pleasing, right? Like I either like I sort of get it, like, oh, like, like a really well-tailored suit or piece of clothing,
Sure.
even if it's astronomically expensive, I can look at it and be like, I do think that looks nice, or like a really fancy piece of jewelry might be a little bit gaudy for me, but I can look at it and be like, I could comprehend how someone could wear like a giant gold diamond-studded fucking thing and be like, this is a symbol of wealth. The Louis Vuitton shit that I've seen does not look good. Like, to me, like, the fucking bag that's in that Gorbachev ad, it looks like one of those prints from fucking LuLaRoe.
They're like gaudy. Yes. They've got like just that silly LV symbol all over everything, over and over and over and over again.
Right.
Again, like especially like as a pattern, like for
it's
me,
like a magic
if I'm
eye.
looking at this, yes, like having the logo just repeated ad nauseum is not looking good. It looks like shit.
Look at this one, and then look at how much it cost. This bag.
All right, we're on fashionfile.com. Yikes. $9,000. Okay, so this is a crossover between Louis Vuitton and Supreme.
Oh, is Supreme a different brand? See,
Supreme's a different brand. Yeah, they're down on Bowery. You should check it out.
$10,000 for a red bag.
Was it Supreme?
A red leather bag.
Was it Supreme? There was some brand that was literally selling a brick for like $1,000 with their logo on it, and like people, like just the most contempt possible for the people buying your products.
Yes, no, that is Supreme. Yes. Fucking hell, man.
Here's a wardrobe trunk, like an old fashioned.
Well, that was how their business started, was with the trunks.
Oh, okay.
That was their original, and that was what they.
I guess this is like a
steamer trunk,
maybe a memorabilia kind of thing. Then but it's like $40,000 for like a wardrobe. Yeah, I don't know, man. That seems high to me. Maybe I'm uncultured, but that seems like a lot of money to spend
for a wardrobe. I haven't spent $40,000 on. I'll never spend that much on my wardrobe of my entire life.
One of the things that they showed in the documentary when they were like taking a tour of the one of the Louis Vuitton workshops or whatever was it looked like that. It was like like the size of a steamer trunk. The outside of it was just that gaudy LV logo over and over and over and over and over and over again. But when you open it up, it was like they called it a portable casino. It had a roulette wheel on the top, and then all of the drawers for like cards and the other games and stuff. It was like 60,000, I believe, or more. It was at least 60,000. It was way up there.
Look at this one. Just take a look at this object and then guess how much it costs.
This looks like a dinosaur turd.
A soccer ball you can't even use.
Yeah, it's a soccer ball made with the hexagonal bits are cut out of the same like print material that the fucking bag is, the brown with the repeating thing. $4,000.
$4,000 for a fucking stupid soccer ball.
For a soccer ball no one will ever use.
Idiots.
You can get those for free if you hang around like a high school.
Yeah. You could get
I'm recommending
anything out of Louis Vuitton for free if you're bold enough.
That's very true.
It's true.
That's very true.
Like,
a little bit of moxie.
Walk out. I'm telling you, walk out like you own the place. That's the way to do it.
5-finger discount, man. In fact, let me check out where the Louis Vuitton star.
Two barrel discount.
No. All right, we're going to Louis Vuitton in let's see. Oh, it's a corporate office. Saks Fifth Avenue. No, there's a Louis Vuitton store on 57th Street.
Really quick. That was one of the
right
reasons
next to Trump Tower.
That's why one of the reasons why he also met with Trump is to see if he could get him to relax the security because it was harming the flagship store.
Are you serious?
Which is really, really funny.
Had you been near Trump Tower while he was president? Because it was wild there.
No, I was pretty much out of New York for most of his presidency.
Right.
I mean, obviously, I've been around that area my entire life, like growing up and stuff. I've gone there at different times. But yeah, I don't think I was there while he was president. I'm trying to remember.
It was wild.
Who goes to Midtown?
No, it sucks so bad.
Like, why
dude.
would you? Unless you're like a tourist and you're coming in to like see like Times Square or whatever. Why the fuck would you go to Midtown? I guess to shop at Louis Vuitton. I guess you know what? If I would have had much nicer luggage. Really, really interesting stuff.
At the $1,200 Patreon level, you will be contributing to our legal fund for when we go in and give a little, 5-finger discount at Louis Vuitton on 57th Street. 1
finger statement. I don't even need the discount.
No,
I'm good. I guess you could steal this to resell it, but
Exactly.
I would never
would you do?
use one of these.
Right.
Like they're ugly. Like if somebody gave this to me, I wouldn't want it. You know, I'd be like, what do you do with this? Again, I can't. I suppose it's just purely a status thing, but it's just I do not understand the aesthetic appeal of this. It looks really ugly.
Sucks, man. Bernard Arnault, you suck.
Well,
That's for tomorrow.
he's dead, so.
Well, no, he's alive.
By the time this airs.
By the time this episode airs, he will be dead.
Oh, my. We can't include that. What the fuck? I was like, what the fuck, man? Bleep that. Bleep that,
it's fine.
please.
There's nothing.
It's
not
not
like
fine.
there's anything implied there. No, it's just.
Yeah. I meant because he wasn't wearing a mask at that party.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, he probably fucking. Yeah, no, he's got that. All right, let's stop it here. Let's stop.
right.
There's too much
right.
actionable shit going on.
Yeah,
Louis Vuitton
yeah.
sucks. Hennessy, I'm a bit. I like Hennessy. If I'm really. No. Goodbye. Stay cool.
yeah,
Stay
just-
cool. Stay cool.
just
Stay
cut
cool.
that. Yeah,
Goodbye.
okay.
Bleep it. Bleep it. Bleep it. Bleep it. All right. Goodbye.
Louis, all she keeps saying is Louis, all she keeps saying is Louis Vuitton, Louis Vuitton, Louis Vuitton, Louis Vuitton, Louis, all she keeps saying is Louis, all she keeps saying is Louis Vuitton, Louis Vuitton, Louis Vuitton, Louis Vuitton.
Soldier, swagger, Louis.
I came out the water, LV shades on, swagging across the border. Everybody knows that.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5.